You are tuned into the Dr. Tina Show with Dr. Tina Moore. For more, visit drtina.com. On this episode of the Dr. Tina Show, I'm sitting down with my friend Deborah Atkinson. Deborah is a fitness expert specializing in women over 50, and she specializes in that menopausal transition and how we keep our fitness up through this process. She is sitting at a beautiful over 60, if you can believe it, and she's come on the show today to teach us all about what we should be prioritizing in our fitness and in our lifestyle for longevity and best outcomes. It was a super fun conversation. I always love speaking with Deborah. She is just in reality, she meets us where we're at. And whether you're a beginner or you're somebody more advanced, there's something in this episode for you. So with that, let's jump in. All right, Deborah Atkinson, thank you so much for coming on the Dr. Tina Show today. You are one of my favorite fit over 50 ladies. That is the name of your brand. And I followed you for a long time. And I'm so excited that you finally came on the show today.
Well, thank you so much for having me. By the way, I'm fit after 60 nowadays. Yeah.
Yes. Okay, this is perfect. So what we're going to do on this episode for everyone listening is we are going to make a solid argument as to why women need to be strength training, especially as they age, more importantly, as they age. And so I thought we could just jam on that.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And can we change the word to want? Want to.
Yes.
We want to.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, we want to. We have to make a case for it. We might have to scare them a little in the process just so they understand the severity of what they're looking at without it. But
this is true.
It is. It is. Okay. So you have a really interesting background and you came on my Ozempic Done Right University Expert Series and shared with me, you have this really extensive background in this world. So please share with the audience.
Yeah. This is year 40. So, it's been a long time. It's been a minute. It's been 42 years that I have consistently, personally been invested in fitness. And that's where it all started. I fell in love with it myself, had to change what I was doing and say, wait, I don't belong here in this graphic design world. So I've done all the things, strength and conditioning coach, medical exercise specialist. I became a personal trainer before anybody was personal training. If you can believe it or not, I was from the Midwest, and the East Coast and the West Coast may have been doing personal training, but the Midwest certainly was not, and they were not ready for me when I was ready for it. So business didn't go very well my first start, but it got better, of course, as we all know. And now it's just come so full circle. It's my time spent teaching in kinesiology at Iowa State University was such a blessing to teach me what it is that we're doing with education, formal education, and how hard it is for it to keep up with what is really happening in science. Because, by the time a textbook is written, it's been 3 to 4 years in the process. It's already outdated by the time it comes and gets in your hands, and the students paying $50 and complaining about that. It's not a good thing. It's a little bit more proactive these days, but I had to get out when I had the choice of every part of me working in the private sector. That part was growing and expanding, and there was more management of trainers and group fitness instructors going on. And we were exploding by 800% with more students who wanted to be trainers and fitness professionals and PTs. And we also served pre-med and all of that. And I was like, I can't answer all these emails and phone calls. I have to choose. And I chose the private sector because it moves faster and we can help more. And I can make a decision in the morning and help somebody with that in the afternoon. And it just didn't work like that in academia, but it taught me a lot about why in the fitness industry, we're getting it wrong, and we got it wrong for so long, following position statements and guidelines that sometimes were written long ago, and they're outdated, and they're only serving a community of one gender, and usually a very young and fit part of that, and how does that apply to women in midlife? I mean, it's been quite a ride, but it's very exciting, I think, right now. Menopause is coming up over and over again. And it's also, I think, dangerous because of that.
Well, you have been here through the whole thing. You've literally been here through the arc of this profession, and you have lived it and you walk the talk. And that's why I love you. I mean, I first found you, the Flipping 50, brand that you've built is, at first I was like, well, I was in my late 30s, and I'm like, nah, I don't have to worry about that yet. But it's fast upon us, right? And so it's this idea, I joke, but I really am not joking, that we have to train for this shit. We have to train for menopause. Like, I need to write a book called Training for Menopause, because it's no joke. Like, we have to get these things in order ahead of time. We have to stay ahead of the curve. We have to build the muscle before we think we need it. We have to get on the hormones before we actually think we need them. Like, it's much harder to catch up when you're behind the curve than staying in front of the curve. And so, what are your thoughts on that? Because you look fantastic. For everyone who's not watching this on YouTube, go to YouTube and watch. You don't get to look like this at 60 if you haven't been training for it for a long time. So what are your, I mean, I know this is a big question, but what are your starting points for people who maybe haven't even touched a weight in their life? And then we'll kind of build on up.
Yes, and please, thank you. However, I also want to say, I think we are seeing some people who they're talking about their journey. They weren't doing it. They weren't doing strength training. Maybe they were cardio bunnies and or have just been away from it for a long time. But we're seeing how they've actually turned their life around, and they look so very different within months or years. Certainly they look like different people. So although, yes, I have been invested in it for 40 years, I don't know that that's, I think some of the things that were naturally my habit, I never, even as a teenager, when it was illegal and more sexy, I didn't really like alcohol, and so I've never been a real drinker, don't really have a sweet tooth. I think that helped me out. I got lucky where that was no motivation, no discipline. It was just luck, but, there is that I think right now, if we could take women who are in their 20s and 30, I mean, right now, my son and his fiance are right there. And I'm just like, oh gosh, if I could help you do this right, and yet I also have to totally respect that it's still, would I have listened to me if I were getting that advice right now? And it's like, it's not going to happen that way. They have to reach for it. We have to make it look attractive. We have to make it something. So what I love right now is when I go to the gym, if I'm not doing it at home, I see younger women in the weight room. I love it.
Yes.
Love it.
Yes. Yeah, they're getting it. The message, I think, is getting out there. And I think that having curves now is more popular than it was in the past. And so, as the fashion trends change and the different body shapes of what's popular kind of comes and goes, I was the child of the 90s heroin chic look. So that was what we were all trying to do, right? And I have these big gymnast wrists from landing on my hands all the time. So I've got big bones in my, big overdeveloped bones in my wrist. And I was trying to make sure that my arm all the way up was the same size as my wrist. Like, that was my goal as a teenager. That's how thin I wanted to be. And it was somewhere around, I don't know, maybe my 30s. I found myself, I was still really, really thin. And I was looking at kind of the like 70s rock stars, like the Stevie Nicks and the Linda Ronstadts and all of them. Remember how thin? Like, I'm sure there's a lot of cocaine happening, and I'm sure there's a lot of fun, but everybody was rail thin back then. And then I noticed, and Carrie Fisher, all of that. And then I noticed as time went on, menopause was not so kind to them. And menopause was not so kind to my mother either. And it's that like Dexedrine, over-the-counter diet pills. We had access to all of that stuff. That was kind of my world that I was in. And I was like, well, shit, I have to do something different. This is not going to work out for me so well. My whole family turns into these little round type 2 diabetics, these little potato shaped diabetics. And I was like, what's the way out? I fortunately met my mentor who in the early 90s said, stop doing cardio so much and start lifting. And I was like, what? And I didn't listen to him, of course. And I started lifting right before I met you. Years ago, I met you at an event and I was like, oh, dude, this is seriously the ticket. Like, I'm on the right path because look at her arms. This is no joke. So like you said earlier, we want people to do this. What are some of the reasons why we might motivate them? What are some of the things you say to women to make them want it?
Do we have males and females listening? Sex is one.
Yes.
So to all the husbands listening, this is why you want your wife to be motivated to lift. But bedroom boredom, we're going to boost testosterone by doing strength training, and we're probably going to kill it if we're trying to do all that cardio. And number one, self-initiating, more confidence, and sex aside, it's just you walk into a room differently. You carry yourself differently. And I'm not even talking about what other people see. It's how you see yourself. That's the difference. It changes everything. I remember, it's probably been 8 years now, pre-pandemic and pre that, someone had gone through a 4-week program where we just give them a sample of lifestyle changes and get them involved in a little bit of strength training. And she said, I started this program for weight loss. And it wasn't a weight loss program, by the way, but that's why women start things. And she said, and I got my life back.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm myself.
Yep. My confidence, my success, my income, the respect that is given to me has all significantly changed since I went from skinny to strong. Like that's all completely changed. Everything changed. How people treat me has completely changed. And I walk into a room with people always ask, like, how do I have such a thick skin? I'm like, because I'm strong. Like I can scrap if I have to. I am much more unfuckable with, Like I already.
That is such a great word.
I used to joke like I needed my ass to match my sass, because I have a mouth on me and I'll run it if I have to. Like I don't like getting crossed if someone's being rude or disrespectful. Like I don't back down very quickly and I'll fight. And you can't fight anymore, but I was a kid growing up. I moved a lot. I've gotten a lot of fist fights, and so like I have that in me, and you just command a different level of respect. I don't know a single person, woman, I should say, men too. I don't know a single person who hasn't started strength training and not watched their success and their income go up. I've never seen it happen. Yeah. I've never not seen somebody make more money. Somehow it translates. So there's something to this whole, it's like a sixth sense. I always describe it as this superpower that people don't know that they don't have it if they don't know what it is if they don't have it. How do you get what I'm saying? Like,
I do. I do. And I'm thinking yesterday about my workout. It's funny that I'm mother of the groom right now. I'm in this moment where I'm picking the wedding song that we're going to dance to. Aww. And then I'm having this moment where I'm absolutely sure that my son is probably not going to like the music I like, and he's going to pick something else. And we're both going to feel awkward out there and just going to want it over. And I'm like, the moments I'm having now are far more emotional than I'm probably that 5 minutes with him will be. So I'm letting myself have this. But I walked around in my workout at the gym yesterday with this shit-faced grin on because I'm listening to Love Me Like a Rock by Paul Simon and all these songs that I'm like, oh, this would be so great. This would be so great. And I was like, I know I looked stupid. They must be wondering, like, why is she smiling? I don't really care.
Yeah.
I don't have time. I have less time on this planet than you. I don't really care what you think. And that attitude, is so refreshing.
Yes. I think that comes with age somewhat, but it's so nice to have the strength to go behind it. And just to know you can back it up. And I don't know. It's definitely a vibe that I can't describe until you have it. Because I've lost it too. I've had injuries and illness has set me back to where I've lost that strength. And I know when it's gone and I'm like, oh, I don't feel the same, So there's like a special superpower that strength brings. And talk a bit too about the data we have. Like strength is more important than muscle size. Strength as people age, right? I mean, strength is the key.
Totally the key when it comes to your longevity. And absolutely. And I would say though that to a woman who's probably between 50 and 60 is dealing with belly fat or insulin resistance, I don't know. I think lean muscle mass and the amount of it, making sure we're not losing that real estate, giving you more metabolically active tissue is also something we don't want to discount. So yes, I mean, overall, but I would say some of that research maybe men and women grouped together looking at longevity wise. And so, for a woman, we want to gain that lean muscle mass as well. And so be looking at count your skeletal muscle mass. Never ever lose that real estate because it's really expensive.
Yes, amen. It's hard to build and it's easy
Yeah.
to lose. It's kind of like a GPA. Like it's
Jeez.
right. It reminds me
Totally.
of my GPA. I'd have like one quarter in high school. I was really sick, and one quarter in college, and like it destroyed everything. And I was like, damn it, this is hard to get back. So, what do you say to women who feel like they might be too old? I get asked that a lot.
You're going to get older faster and sicker while you're doing it if you're not lifting. You're going to start looking younger. But to that point of, am I too old and I don't want to get hurt? Because usually those are lumped really like close first and second comments. You're going to get injured a lot more likely if you're not strength training than if you are. If you really are worried about getting hurt somewhere, the instruction you're getting is really bad, because we're not having you do anything crazy here. But we have had proof for over 40 years since I sat in that classroom in Ames, Iowa as an undergrad, that 90 somethings can start lifting weight, having never done it, and gain strength. At that point, we're probably not going to gain lean muscle mass, but gaining strength is all that will probably matter to us at that point.
And how important is it for folks to understand what that strength is doing for them as they age, and also control and healthy skeletal muscle versus sarcopenic, atrophying, fatty, infiltrated skeletal muscle?
Mm. It's going to be important to everything we do. I think it comes down to, at the very bottom and the base, you don't want somebody wiping your butt. When you're at that moment, that to me is like, dang it, I have only a son. I don't even have a daughter. This is going to suck, right? Not where you want to go. It's like, I don't want that for him. And so I think those things and the independence, and then if you back it out further and further, if you've gone down this path with a parent, it's driving, you're going to drive longer if you have good reaction skills. You have good muscle, your brain is still going to function better. That agility, power, getting up and out of your chair. You've seen them, the electronic chairs that will launch you out of your chair. We don't want to go there, right? It's called muscle. Get it at the gym. Don't pay $1,000 for that thing. We can have, I think a long life the way we want it. Not just extending our life and being more sick for longer years or living in a compromised way, but literally loving our life. So in order to do those things, we've got to get out and start doing them. And I would say to people who are holding on I'm waiting till retirement to start the traveling and the bucket list things. I think we've got to start doing those things now. If you're not motivated by strength training itself, by doing the exercise, put something on the calendar that you're getting ready for, that you are motivated by. Let that guide you to, I want to be able to walk the streets of Italy or Ireland when we go. I want to be able to play St. Andrews, whatever that might be for you. But if you have the thing out there, then the training becomes far more valuable than just hitting my quota at the gym.
Oh, that's such a great point. Training for something, having a goal is I'm so goal oriented. So there's always something. It might even be vanity. Like, I'm going to this event and I want my butt to look good in this dress. But more importantly, or I might just set a pull-up goal because I want it, or whatever. I want it. I want something. I want there to be a goal. And so I'm often having.
Can you do a pull-up?
I could until a few months ago, and I started slacking, and my pull-ups, they just go, right? They'll come back fast. I was a gymnast, so I know I can get it back. But yeah, I think people need one good pull-up so you can run away from the zombies. You might have to jump up seriously, like you just have to get up over that fence. Maybe it's a dog, I don't know, but like I want to be able to sprint and hop up and get over a fence. I can climb, I can scramble fences. I can still climb. Like, it's monkey strength. I was in Santa Monica a few weeks ago, and I went out to the rings, and my husband was with me, and he's he's like a natural athlete. He doesn't train very hard. He's a working man. He's like a blue collared working guy. And he's like, I work really hard every day, all day, physical labor. I don't have to work out. And I'm like, okay, well, we'll see how your lumbar discs feel about that in a few years. But because that's what I saw in clinic. Anyway, we're on the rings and he doesn't for a second think I can't do it. But like this young guy was looking at us like, should she be doing that? Because there's like two silver haired people getting on the rings. And I just cruised right across him and did great. And then he came up and he's so tall, it wasn't set right. And he clipped his foot and like bit it, just wiped out. But I mean, he was holding on. He would have gotten it if it had been a taller ring. But it was so fun. And I was like, thank God I can still do that. Like those are the things I still want. I wanted to just do that because it was fun. Like not to show off. I was a gymnast and I can always do the rings. So I always want to do the rings and I want to have hot sex and I want to be able to travel and walk. And I don't know how people get through airports, honestly. I mean, I feel like it's a bit of a physical endeavor sometimes just for myself to be sprinting around airports to make flights, so you got to train for that.
Yeah, totally. And I think when you see a couple who's very diverse, like, one of them's young and not young, but spry and able and has the capacity. And the other is, maybe being pushed in the wheelchair.
Oh, it's the worst.
Or they're riding the cart, it's like, that's where real separation begins.
Oh, that's such a good point. I see that often, and I'll see it years earlier when the man or the woman is in really good physical shape and they very much honor the gym. And then the other partner is just not in shape at all. And they're in their like 40s or 50s. And I know what's coming for them down the line. What you just described is coming down the line. And it's devastating to the other partner. I've seen it so many times in my family and grandparents, and there's a caretaker and somebody who's wasting away, and it ruins the other person's life.
It does. And I think it is a hard thing to admit. I think there's some people who will just say, well, for better or worse, and here we are. But that's a tough one. It's really a tough one. I think this should be a part of prenups, right?
Yes.
To look, like, I honor you by honoring me, and let's agree this is what we're doing.
Yep. I agree. I told my husband, I was like, under no uncertain terms are we to gain 40 pounds or more or lose. Because we're both, like, we're not going to waste and we're not going to blow up unless we're sick, unless there's like a real medical reason. But even then, I will do everything in my power to make sure that we have the resources we need to not go that pathway, because fitness is so important to me that I will allocate dollars towards it. And like I tell him repeatedly, like, it is literally your job to stay strong and protect me. That is why I married you, dude. Like I was a 46-year-old woman, fully self-sufficient, single. Like I'm fine. I married him for the perks of having a protector and a strong man. So stay strong, right? And I'm not even ashamed to say that, but I think that folks don't realize it. The scenario you just described is so common, and that starts decades earlier when somebody gives up. And I get it. I took care of people with really painful joints and pain. I understand that these physical ailments will often be the starter of a lot of downstream health ailments, but I get it. I understand. And I understand not everybody has access to good medical care, but we have to do what we can do and work around what we can work around, because I see dudes out here where I live in the country that are in their 80s and 90s, and they might have the most hobbled up knee you've ever seen, or hobbled up ankle that got ran over by a tractor 20 years ago. And they're still out there working it. They're still lean. There's 90. I've never seen so many 90-some-year-old dudes, just grizzly, skinny old dudes walking around tough as nails and still strong, that I have in this farming community. So somewhere along the line, somebody made a choice to sit in a lazy boy forever or not.
Yeah. Agree. Yeah. And there's something to be said for, not being totally in that contemporary lifestyle, having to do chores. Like, we've gotten so far away from that, but that's why we need the gym, those of us that do, because we sit so much the rest of the time, and we're no different, right? I mean, activity is a part of our core, both of us, but still we sit quite a bit.
What are some of the things that are household chores that you would say women should be training for? Like laundry
Mm,
baskets? Like what are some common ones that you can translate
mm.
into day to day?
So funny, but yeah, I just changed my air filters, you know? So, I mean, you climb up and down off that ladder. That's no joke, right? I mean, you got to feel pretty confident. Number one, I had to go get it from the garage. I have to haul it in, you know, and maneuver that. So, little things like consistently doing that. But yeah, you know, every day we're lifting, hauling. I mean, you tell me one household where Amazon is not coming to the door dropping boxes. You know, we got to be able to pick those things up. I have a pile of books got delivered for a friend of mine who thinks it's more convenient to keep them at my house than hers. You know, and I'm like, I need to move these. I don't need them at my front door. So even vacuuming,
Hmm.
you know, can be a big deal. If you're struggling with a back issue and your, you know, pelvis or you're out of alignment, you know, all of those things are one-sided things also, you know, and then if you go to play and recreation, you're playing golf, you know, and you're swinging a golf club 200 times on one side, you know, I hope that you're doing something to balance that out, right? Not only get your drive further down. You know, I can't help you with going to the rough. That's up to you. But, you know, you get it further down, but yet, you know, that strength training session can also help put you back in balance. You know, if you choose wisely, you're not just doing a balanced program, you're doing the one that helps the asymmetry you've created.
Yeah, so true. I have a gal in my Pilates class who's in her, I'm shocked actually. I go to this beginner's Pilates class because I could go to the more advanced. I'm at that level and I could go faster with the younger crowd. But I love
Hmm.
working out with these women because they're all like shockingly older than I think they are. Some of them are, when they tell me their age, I'm like, you're what? You're 69? Like, I thought you were 54. You know, it's crazy. And they've been doing Pilates for a long time. And one of them loves golfing. So that's her big thing. Like, she stays strong in Pilates. And it's different. I mean, I will say, I think strength training, heavy lifting, in addition to Pilates, I don't say Pilates is the end all be all, but for her, it's kept her really mobile. A lot of them actually are farmers or have big, huge rural type gardens. So they're always talking about their gardens. And these are not like little front yard gardens. You know, these people live out on acreage. So it's so fun to sit in there and watch. And there's a big dude in there who super tall and I think he's probably younger than I am, but he's in there, he's sweating it out, you know. And I will say that when it comes to certain moves, I crush it because it's the stuff that requires like the squatting. When we do repeated squatting or hovering or whatever, I'm like, oh dude, I'll squat this butt all day. Because I train for that. But the point being is I don't know what's in that water, but those women look phenomenal. And when I come out of
Mm.
there, the other day I came out, it was with all these little old ladies in there, and they're so cute and they're so strong and their lights are on. And I come out and there's a woman coming across the street with her daughter. And I can't even guess how old she is, but she looks really old and she's in a walker and her daughter's kind of holding on to her. And her daughter is younger than I am, but just looks a total disaster of metabolic health. And I was like, it was just this blaring, obvious polarity of what I just walked out of. You know, these
Mm.
really fit, active, like
Hmm.
vital older women and men too. And then coming across the street as your typical American, just
Hmm.
dilapidating. And I'm like, it hurts my heart. It hurts
Mm.
my heart because it doesn't have to be that way. If people really understood the metabolic pathways at play that exercise induces to really preserve mitochondrial health and really
Hmm.
keep degenerative processes at bay, they would all be moving their buns around more. But this stuff
Hmm.
happens decades earlier, which is who we're talking to. Like, this is why you want to start training in your 30s and 40s, ladies, at the latest, right? I mean, you
For
can
sure.
start later,
Yeah.
but is there kind of you have so much experience training folks. Is there kind of a magic age where I know for myself clinically, it was around 45. If people hadn't taken good care of themselves, it was real hard for me to get them back. I could improve their health, but I couldn't get them back around 40 to 45 if they weren't in good shape by then. Do you know what I'm saying? Is there a certain age that you've seen in training that kind of
I think, yeah, I think those people who haven't taken care of themselves earlier, it's a younger and younger age, you know, right? Because they're already looking older. than their actual biological age, or their chronological age. They're looking older than they should, and they're probably experience more aches and pains. But I think the downfall is the reason those aches and pains are there, they attribute to, well, this is just a part of getting older. They accept it, as opposed to challenging that there's a different way, that not everybody experiences this, and you don't have to either. Just even being aware of foods that you might be eating that are inflammatory versus an anti-inflammatory diet. The benefit of exercise, I think a lot of people, like you said, they're going to have that fear of pain, like doing this is going to hurt me more, as opposed to the realization that actually moving, getting that synovial fluid moving and getting things circulating is actually going to help you more and help you tolerate pain more and be more resilient. It just doesn't go that way. So yeah, I think it really depends. If you've got somebody who's been overweight for a long time, the feeling that this is too late, and is it too late? I get asked that question still very
Me
frequently,
too. Is
and
it too
it's
late?
just like, don't make me come over there. We're going to wash your mouth out with soap. I mean,
Yeah.
are you still living? You have a heartbeat? Come on.
Yes, I get that all the time. Is it too late? I'm like, too late for what? What are we talking about? Because we
Hmm.
can
Yeah.
always move the dial, right?
Yeah. Always.
Yeah.
Always.
I see these little old ladies on Instagram and they're deadlifting crazy heavy weights, and everyone's cheering, but honestly, sometimes they don't have great mobility, and I'm glad that they're lifting heavy weights, but I'm also thinking like, gosh, I so wish for that woman that she had maintained that mobility
Hmm.
decades earlier. It's so,
Hmm.
just like you were saying with muscle, it's so hard to earn and easy to lose. Same with
Hmm.
mobility.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's such a great point. And I think that a lot of women, that's a fear. Honestly, if I start lifting, I'm going to lose my flexibility.
Oh,
And we discounted that. I mean, decades ago, that if you're going through full range of motion when you're resistance training, it actually encourages greater range of motion. It doesn't stifle it or shrink it. So it's actually much more helpful. But, if you're on the outside looking in, you may still believe some of those things that you learned at a time when you were really impressionable. So, yes, we need that mobility. And I think, alluding to like the really heavy deadlifting, I think there's that fine line where we don't want to cause degeneration by the activity itself. It's not necessarily about lifting as heavy. It's about, what are the results you're after? Are you doing this for bone density? Are you doing this for more skeletal muscle mass and for gaining strength? But the strength doesn't have to show up necessarily in just you doing another 45 plate on the weights, because there's no glory necessarily in that unless you're competing. You're probably going to love your life better, the way that you move easier, if you're just paying attention to, how are my daily activities right now? Are they getting easier? Do I have more energy? If I go to work all day, do I now feel like, let's play? I still have plenty of energy at night.
yeah. Or can you pick up your kids or grandkids? Can you get up and down off
Yeah.
the floor readily? That was something very common in my practice. Patients were losing. They would lose the ability to get up and down off the floor readily, and then they would not fight to maintain it or get it back. So an injury
Mm.
would put them in that position, and then they would never
Hmm.
come out of the injury because PT, like physical therapy being offered up to folks after orthopedic issues, is abysmal in that it's not offered. It might be in some
Hmm.
places and it might be with some insurance panels,
Hmm.
but for the most part, every patient I've ever had to fight to get physical therapy or any kind of rehabilitation
Hmm.
and after any kind of issue. And it was, they just don't get it back. And then it's just one more thing gone. Right. And then there's
Hmm.
another, and then there's just one more thing gone. And I'm like, dude, I want to be able to get up and down off the floor. I want to be able to pick up my grandkids and throw them around if I have them someday. I want to, well, you might be having some grandchildren soon with your son getting married. You better get ready.
I am hoping, because I'm like, I got a little lesson for him. I'm like, kids break your heart wide open, and then they break your heart like 30 million times before they're 30.
Yes.
Like, not that I'm counting, but Yeah.
Oh, I know. It's a daily thing. But I also want to be a role model for my daughter, whether she listens to me or not. It's hard to get my daughter to take
Yeah.
exercise seriously, but I know she will at some point because it's in there. I know it's in there. I know, I ingrained it in her at some point where she saw that how much I valued it. And so I'm just trying to lead by example, which is another huge reason I think, and especially for our grandkids. I think my daughter got to grow up with my parents, which was just such a gift because I did not get to grow up with my grandparents at all. I maybe saw them like once or twice every 5 years, and I didn't know them before they died. And my dad's health has really declined since my daughter was quite small. And that's the only man she's had in her life, really. And so, because her dad pretty much skipped out. So she has, like, that's in her head of how a man ages or something. Do you know what I'm saying? She doesn't have a role model. So my husband is this really virile, fit, active guy. And I hope that that's something that she can see as like, you don't have to choose to age that way. You don't have to dilapidate. So I think that we're modeling for everybody as we go through this life, and we may not even realize it.
Yeah, no, I think that's so true. And I think you're probably touching so many people that you don't even realize what a ripple effect you're having. And I think sometimes with kids, you don't realize until you hear indirectly, like they said it to somebody else, that they were actually watching. They noticed, and little things start to come out now. And it's like, God, it took this long. Are you kidding me?
Well, we have the data to show that when we're dealing with childhood obesity, we are, 80 some percent of the time dealing with parental obesity in the home. So it has to go the opposite way as well. Fitness has got to lead to more fitness, and good health habits have got to lead to good health habits. I mean, this is environmental. It's contagious. You can't, it's not just what you're feeding your kids. It's how you're choosing to walk your walk and, carry yourself through this life. And so for me, I take that role very seriously. It's not just because I'm online. It's not just, part of it was being a doctor. I cannot stand walking into a doctor's office and seeing a doctor that takes horrendous care of themselves. I immediately walk out. And to be totally honest with you, I've said this out loud before, in the functional medicine community, there's so many of them that don't lift. And I'm like, you literally are just telling me you don't get it, because the benefits of lifting weights are so intimately tied to how our mitochondrial health outcomes are going to be that I can't even process not lifting weights. Like, it's such a non-negotiable. If you actually understand metabolic health, you would lift. And so when doctors aren't walking the talk, I take almost offense to it. Because I grew up a very sick kid being led around by doctors that were in poor health telling me what I should and shouldn't do. And I'm like, you guys can all go F off. Because if you're not walking it, then I'm not listening.
Yeah, so true. That's kind of like, you could go back to, I'm from a really small town, right? High school coaches, or we didn't have the greatest role models, for what should this look like? People were talking, but not necessarily walking their talk and demonstrating to you, which is, as we all know, far more powerful.
Yeah, absolutely. I walked into the ER once. I had pneumonia, and I thought I was having a heart attack, but it was actually just I just had a terrible deep walking pneumonia, and it caught up with me. And I remember walking in pretty freaked out. I was with my teenage daughter at the time. And the minute I got into the back room, the ER doctor came in, and he was super fit. He was my age. He was super fit. Like, he filled out his scrubs beautifully. And I verbally said, "Oh, thank God." Like, oh, thank God he lifts, thank God he gets it. And he was the coolest doctor I've ever interacted with. Totally respectful of me, didn't discount me for being a naturopathic doctor or chiropractor, was super cool. But the minute I saw that he was fit, I was like, oh, thank God. It's because he had the superpower. He held the superpower of strength. And I was like, your brain's on, your body's on. And at least I know that we have something in common.
So good.
Okay, so let's give folks some actionable steps. We just hopefully convinced them that they want to strength train. You have so many great programs, but before you share where people can find you, what are some actionable steps that you help with women in particular in the middle age to start moving towards that longevity?
I think number one is just walking every day, or substitute walking for what you can do if your ankles or your knees or your hips or no, can't do that. Is it elliptical or is it swimming or rowing or something else that is a can do? Don't look for the can'ts here. But we need to move to offset the amount of time we spend doing sedentary things or dialing Instacart instead of even going to the store. We just move so much less. So getting that in, we need it as much for our heads as we need for our bodies, though. Decreasing cortisol, you're moving the muscle, and hopefully you're creating more of the muscle that it makes every walk matter more and that much more beneficial when you've got a little bit more lean muscle mass because we're doing this uptake of sugar. We're decreasing your cortisol levels. We're going to help you sleep more at night. It's magical. And that is self paced. So just movement. We're not saying be at a certain heart rate or go a certain pace, but move every day.
I love that. That's totally,
Yeah.
wholeheartedly. What would be the next best step if they're feeling it?
Next best step. Yeah, you gotta strength training. So that's when you want to start picking up the weights. You want to prioritize it. So you're going to lift at least twice weekly, 3 times may be great for you if you're sleeping well, your endocrine system is great, you're not struggling with, I need a nap after workouts. You're sure that you're recovering between. You can do that third, but I would divide them up into 2 really heavy kind of Monday and Friday, and then maybe your Wednesday is much more functional, one-legged, one-armed with rotation, doing things that, power yoga class or a yoga class at all could be your functional strength training. It's body weight. You're doing one-legged things. That's a great combination. So we're getting rotation, flexion, extension. We're getting the strength and do it with a little speed. So you've got power after you've done, enough 2 months. So you've got some foundation there and your joints and your ligaments are ready for it. Do a little power. So we've got some speed involved in it because we're losing power as we age faster than even just strength alone.
Talk about that a little bit more. Talk about power.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, combining power is basically what we're doing is taking a speed component with the strength component. So yes, great for you to do slow controlled work as you first start with strength training. Safer, you're going to focus on the technique. You're going to, during the first 6 to 8 weeks of getting started, the advances, the progress you make really are about the neural connection, your brain getting a stronger signal going to your muscles, recruiting more fibers, recruiting a higher percent of those fibers. We can't even rush that by going heavy. So there's no reason for you to pick up 2 heavy weights right away. Just take it slow, get the form right, know where your body is in space and feel comfortable doing it. But then we want to add that power, and that's moving a little bit faster under control. So we decelerate, meaning you're going to pull quickly, but you're going to stop on purpose. You're going to pause there and you're going to let it down very slowly. So there is no momentum. We used to call the blue shirts in the gym, in the alumni, the faculty members at the university. They used to come in blue outfits and they would go really fast all the way through. Every noon, they were doing the whole thing. Every day at noon, doing the whole thing, doing it really fast. There's a lot of momentum going on, not a lot of strength.
Yeah.
So know the difference. And that's hard, wear and tear on your joints. So, if you're walking around with ankle weights on or please stop that right now. Stop that. Don't make me come over there. Those things are really not a good idea. But when we say prioritize strength training, it doesn't mean you're going to do it more often or do it every day because a part of the strength training is the recovery in between. Mm-hmm. You have to let the muscle, the micro tearing that we do when we exercise, it's supposed to happen. It says, okay, we stimulated, we did an overload. It was a little harder than you've ever done before. Now we let the muscle repair. And that when it's super compensating, it's how you can pick up an 8-pound when you could only do 5 at first. So when you get stronger. So really important to remember the exercise provides the opportunity for fitness. The fitness happens in the rest and recovery between the workouts. And that doesn't mean you're sitting on the couch eating bonbons between. It means you go for those walks. You can do some other kind of cardio. You can do workouts that are more recovery in nature. We want you to move every day, but not necessarily strength training every day.
Yes, I love that. That's great. And the
Yeah.
reason we want that power is so if
Mhm.
God forbid we step off a curb fast or we something, we have to move fast, we
Mhm.
don't tear the crap
Mhm.
out of ourselves and or
Mhm.
break something
Yeah.
or fall down, being able to have that agility with some strength behind it, with some quick movement ability. Like we lose that
Mhm.
significantly as we age, right? Like don't we lose those type
Yeah.
2 fibers and we just start to
We do. We lose those two fibers still about twice as fast as we lose our slow twitch because we move slow all
yeah.
the time. Makes sense. But to your point, power still could be fairly linear. So we do have to have that agility. You want to do some things where you're reacting to something. And ideally you can do it by yourself, bounce a ball against the wall, that's going to go in multi directions and try to react to that. What have I just seen very recently? Boxing where the lights go on the wall and you're punching at them.
Oh,
I love
fun.
that one. Right.
That
I
sounds fun.
know. Or dancing, ballroom dancing with somebody is you're reacting to somebody else's moves and in a micro way. That's reaction and
Oh, I
agility.
swear the folks that, my grandparents were big on dancing and my grandma used to always talk about how she and my grandpa used to go dancing and all the famous people they'd see at the dance halls. And I just think we've lost so much with that going away,
Mm.
like dance that was
Yeah.
how young people interacted and spent time together. For my generation, it was the mall. We all went to the mall. Malls are really no more. At least we were walking the mall, but
Hmm.
I think dancing is I dance my ass off by myself all the time, anywhere that I can. I could be in the grocery store at certain times of the day. The grocery store has great music playing. And my daughter, to this day, like her whole life, she's just
I have
cringe.
not
She
noticed.
just cringes. She's like, "Why are you dancing in the grocery store, Mom?" And I was like, "Because I dance as long as I can dance, damn it. I will continue to shake my ass as long as my ass will shake." Because I don't want to lose it because I want to keep that spinal
Oh.
mobility.
Yeah, and 60 years from now, when you're finally gone, she will be in a grocery store with tears running down her face, remembering this.
Oh, I'm going to dance until I can't dance anymore. Nobody will dance with me, but I don't care. I dance all over my house. I wear my Bose, headphones, the Bluetooth, and my followers online freak out. And they're like, "I can't believe you're wearing wireless headphones." And I'm like, "Oh, it's, you know what? I'm dancing. I'm fine. Everything's good." And I hula hoop. I'm trying to keep it mobile. We don't want our spines to glue up. We don't want anything to glue up.
Yeah. Well, and that's the last thing, right? Is mobility. So daily, that should happen in some way, shape, or form. But it doesn't have to mean that you go to yoga or even Pilates, but doing things like the hula hoop is fantastic. I mean, how many times have you moved your body in that way in the last few years, So pick one up.
Yeah, do it. Stay mobile. We have to. I just vote people put on a song every day. They pick a song. And I usually tell folks to pick a
Mm,
song that, like you were walking around the gym listening to music that you loved.
yeah.
Pick something. I
Hmm.
dance between sets. That's a big one. I dance a
Hmm.
lot between sets when I'm doing heavy lifts just to kind of keep myself going. But pick
Hmm.
something that, I mean, there's so many songs from my youth that move me to almost tears. I have whatever that's called.
Hmm.
What is that called where music gives you the chills? And there's like a thing that some people have genetically where music gives them an emotional feeling and they get, goosebumps all over them. I get that. And so I can listen to something from way back at a happy time in my life and I am just right back there and everything's
Me
awesome,
too.
right? So
Yeah.
I say put that stuff on, put it on a playlist and dance.
Hmm.
Dance around your
Hmm.
house, dance with your dogs, dance with your kids, dance with
Hmm.
anyone your partner, hopefully anyone. My husband's just like, "You're crazy." But anyone who will dance with me, I'm dancing. So yes, I love it. Okay, so this is great. So basically, we need to be walking daily. We need to be lifting a few times a
Yeah.
week, and we need to maintain our
Hmm.
mobility and our power.
Hmm. And agility, reaction skills. And I would also say get breathless.
Okay, talk about that a
Get
bit.
several times a week. So VO2, right, is the talk of the town. So everybody says zone two. I'm not so convinced that zone two is the ticket for women as much as we need high intensity. We need to get breathless. And, it's odd, but women will often say to me, well, what does breathless feel like? And I'm like you can't breathe, like breathless.
Yeah.
So I have a hard time describing
Huffing and
that. But
puffing.
yeah, in about 20 to 30 seconds, you're going hard enough at whatever it is you're doing that you need to take a break. It's what I call hands on knees. You're bent over and I need to stop.
Okay.
It's not just I'm going to walk around and pace around like we did in the 80s, thinking, don't let your blood pool. That's what we used to tell people. It's actually, we're not worried about your blood pooling. You're going to be fine.
Okay. So
If you work really hard, you can rest and be still.
you're talking like hands on knees, breathless, and you would do
hmm
this how many times a
hmm
week?
so it depends a little bit, on who you are, but you could shoot for getting breathless a little bit every day. But if you're truly doing interval training, the rule of thumb is injury rate goes up significantly, especially if you're doing high impact with about 45 minutes a week or more.
Okay.
It goes up. So to define that, the interval time is the work time when you are getting breathless, as well as the recovery time. And if you do, say, 4 to 6 sets of that, depending on how long it takes to recover, that might be 10 to 15 minutes each. So you could do 3 or 4 different sessions a week, and you're still going to be within that, keeping the injury rate low. But let's say you're running uphill one day, and another day you're doing those intervals in a swimming pool. Well, you're reducing your risk of injury when you're in the pool, most likely. So you might get by with a little bit more. But when, late 90s, when high intensity interval training, we called it at first, all of us, Tabata,
Yeah.
and we all did it, even though it was based on elite male trainers who were 25 and threw up in wastebaskets because they worked so hard, thinking, well, then it's going to work for me.
Right.
Right? And you're a woman in midlife, probably not exactly the same, but as we started using it across everybody, mainstream, simultaneously injury rate went up by 144% with people who were doing HIIT because we weren't recovering in between, and because we were suggesting that we do really short recovery and then come right back at it again. Since we know that high intensity repeat training, which is actually just do the same intense, but do whatever you need so that you can close your mouth and breathe through your nose. Even if it's 3 minutes, take whatever you need for recovery. You are probably less likely to be injured. You're more likely to work really hard, going faster, maybe lifting more while you do that interval. So you're really working at your capacity. You're probably going to elevate your fitness level more if you take full recovery than if you don't.
So you take as much time in the off interval as you need until you can breathe comfortably through your nose.
Yes.
Okay. I love that. No, that's pretty much how I do it. And my version of HIIT has always been that because I have petered out little adrenal glands. So, and I don't go, I always tell patients, like, go as hard as you can. But if your hard is only 6 to 8 seconds at first, then you start there. And if you can only do 2 or 3 of these intervals, I had a patient once that was hundreds of pounds overweight, and she lost so much weight, literally just running around the parking lot at her work. She was a high-end engineer at a company here in Oregon. And she would run around as fast as she could, but she could only make it like at first 10 seconds, then 12 seconds, then, maybe up to 20 seconds. And she could only do 3 of those. And she lost so much weight doing that. It was crazy. She came back in and I was like, what have you done? And she's like, I'm doing HIIT. And she told me how she was doing it. And I was like, that for me, that wouldn't have been enough. But for her, it was phenomenal. And then she built up from there, right? Because she was hauling around quite a bit of weight on those knees. And so I was like, be careful.
Yeah.
But you got to meet yourself where you're at. And this is really individualized and can be individualized and still be effective because you're still stoking those pathways. You're still getting the right metabolic pathways going, even if it's just small at first, and then you can expand. Would you say yes?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah. And you can't let anybody say, because somebody will say, well, how fast should I go? Or it doesn't matter. Are you breathless? That never lies. And you don't need to ask, what should my heart rate be? Because sometimes that lies.
Yes.
that, it's reading what it was. It's not reading it in the minute anyway. So breathless never lies.
I
Trust it.
love this so much. And I will give a pearl. Bring some salt with you. I have these little rock
Mm,
salts from Redmond's Real Salts. They make these, they actually sell the salt rocks and they come in a
hmm
bag. And I have those everywhere in the gym. And I'll just suck on a rock in between. That's how I get my nose breathing back, is I'll suck on the rock as
mm.
I walk around or have my hands on my knees until I can get back to baseline. And I am careful though. I have the petered out adrenal glands, and I will tell the middle-aged ladies with the completely compromised adrenal system, you can
Yeah,
overdo this. So be careful,
absolutely.
because maybe 1 to 2 times a week is enough to start out with and see how you do, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the rule of thumb. If afterward you're feeling like I need a nap or I could take one, but it's not working, just take it off the plate. Doesn't mean you're taking it off forever. It just means right
I
now.
love that. When do you suggest piggybacking this hit on? Would you say before or after a strength training session or on alternate days?
Mhm. I like alternate days because I think you come into something fresh, you're going to work harder. And so whatever you do second, is always going to be, you're not quite going to be full on your game necessarily. Could you couple them? Absolutely. If you're coupling them, I would say you do the most important thing to you first. However, I will have to say that I feel more alert if I did the hit first because it's short.
Mm-hmm.
It's 10 to 15 minutes, and that's almost my warm up. I feel more alert and on if I do it before. So it's okay to break rules, test what feels best for you.
Dr. Stacy Sims says to do this strategy because, and you probably can explain this better, if you're
hmm
just kind of doing that medium intensity all the time, you are burning up that
hmm
cortisol candle. Can you
Yep.
talk about this a little bit? How going over that for short duration?
hmm So when you think about it, we told everybody wrong back in the 80s, like be in that target heart rate range. I mean, that is exactly what we're saying the opposite of right now. That moderate exercise, it makes the hair on my neck stand up when I hear it's still given as, yeah, moderate exercise. No. Like, do a moderate amount of high intensity exercise, do a moderate amount of strength training, but don't do moderate exercise. So the highs and the lows are, I call it bipolar. You want bipolar exercise. So we call this middle zone no benefits zone. So nothing good is happening in there. We are at about 45 minutes, especially, tends to be the place where cortisol continues to rise. And even those of you who say, but that's how I mitigate or negate my stress level. But you're not. You're not actually. So physiologically, we're terrible judges of what's happening to us. If we like it, especially, we are so dangerous. And I'm an endurance junkie, so I can say this because it's me too. But at 45 to 60 minutes, the cortisol continues to rise, and you don't get that descending cortisol that should be the aftertake of most exercise. So we do have a rise in cortisol blood sugar while we're exercising because it's what we use for energy. But then it should come down lower than it was before. What we want to be sure of is that we're using cortisol the way it was meant to. So think of how we used to have to run and go get dinner, right? And kill it, right? And then the stressor was over. You give a speech, stressful, but then it's over. You have to have this surge of energy to save the dog from the car, and you do, and then it's over. But now we're living this chronic level of higher elevated cortisol. Plus, you're a woman in menopause. You punch that ticket, you have higher cortisol. Boom, that's it. You already got that. Now, if we try to exercise in that middle zone, we continue to have that rise. But if you lift weights, you do a set and you put the weight down and recover. So you use the cortisol and then recover. Use it, recover, the way it's meant to do. That's how HIIT works, right? We're going up, we're recovering completely. Going up, recovering completely. You will feel completely different if you're not a believer in HIIT. When you're finished with HIIT, you actually should feel more energetic and lighter. By comparison to you go long and slow, you kind of feel beat up and heavy.
Yep. Yep. No,
Yep.
this is beautiful. This is what I was hoping you would say, because I think people need to understand this. We're all just this kind of low grade endurance junkie
Mm-hmm.
generation and burned
Mm-hmm.
out adrenal. That's probably how I got myself here. So,
Well, inevitably, we'll have these conversations. We'll go all the way through this and we'll be talking about planning. And somebody will say, but where's the cardio go? I'm like, wait, have you not been
plenty in
listening?
there.
And just default to everybody. We're going to default to what we thought was the right thing for years and decades. So it's going to take a minute to realize you'll be fitter without that.
Well, this is the cardio. I mean, you're lifting weights. You'll be
Yeah.
breathless with all
Yeah.
this. I mean, you'll
Yeah.
I mean, I do my lollygag walks. So I do, just to tolerance, I do my lollygag walks when I'm out on the,
Yeah.
in the field. I'm on my property here, but when I'm on my treadmill, I'm definitely doing more of what you just described, because I
Mm-hmm.
can control variables there. And for those
Mm-hmm.
listening too, who might have some orthopedic faults like I do, I can't sprint anymore.
Mm-hmm.
I ripped the crap out of my Achilles 2 years ago doing sprint intervals and completely severed it. It was hanging on by a string, and I opted to not have surgery, which the data shows clearly that surgery or no surgery, that people heal the same, and the results after are the same. Your risk of re-injuring it are the same. So I opted to have nobody mess with me and not go under general anesthesia, and I'm just fine. But I am a little scared of the sprint intervals, so I just crank up the incline and
Yep.
I huff it. And I'll get the
Mm-hmm.
speed up as fast as I can to where I'm huffing it, and then I come back down and I rest. So there's ways around this. Like I do the rower. I have a rowing machine. There's different ways for
Mm-hmm.
me to get this in with, by still, I have hip issues and low back issues. And so I think my running days are over. I'm not so sure about my sprinting days, but I find other ways to sort of sprint, if you will.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah.
Workarounds. What do you, before I let you go, I have one more
Mhm.
brain picking question. What do you think of like the weighted vests or the ruck vests, or even a light
Love
one? You
'em.
love them? Okay. I love them too.
Yeah, I do. I've been using them for years, decades, actually. And before they were making them convenient for women, and they had to go over the head, which was like I could only use it with a client if I could help them put it on, because otherwise they were going to screw their shoulder up putting
Oh
it on.
no.
Yeah. So and they're so much better. You can find a low, easy entry, easy access. And if particularly those of you who are starting out with them, if you can find, you know, inserting those weights so you can take them out, you can start really light and get used to it. The only challenge for most of the women that I work with, they have these over firing upper trapezius
Yeah.
muscles. So when they first put that weighted vest on, if they just go out and they think, well, I'm going to wear this on my 30-minute walk, they come back and they're like, shoulders up to their ears. So there's an onboarding
Yes.
ramp. You need just a few minutes. Do it while you're cooking dinner first, and then get used to it before you take it out.
Yes. And I will add, I made the mistake. I put it on and did housework for like an hour and a half around my house, and my
Oh.
back was killing me that evening and the next day. And I was like, what did I do? Like, what did I get up to mess up? I normally know what I did to upset my back. And I was like, I overrucked it. I think I overdid it with that, because you can get lazy and you start to sort of, compromise your posture. So I always tell
Yeah.
women, well, it's the Pilates in me. It's like, so long as you can keep your shoulders back and down and your spine strong and upright, that's as long as you
Mhm.
wear it. Like that's the
Yes.
length of the walk. As soon as you feel
Yeah.
yourself kind of dropping into your low back and arching your back and your ribs start flaring and you kind of get your crummy posture back, take it off. You can build up, like you said, on ramp.
Agree.
Yeah.
Agree. Yeah. But I also love them for exercise at home for those people who feel like I can't overload by just holding weights in my hand anymore. So I can add that extra weight. Now I've got the weight in my hands. Now I'm back to, doing a little bit more work for my glutes and my quads and my hamstrings.
I love it. I love them for push-ups too. I can really get my push-ups back faster when I have a little bit of weight on my body. So great. This is so great. Anything I missed? I feel like we hit the high points.
I think we covered a lot of ground. Yeah.
Okay. This is very helpful for everyone listening. All you middle-aged ladies, when I say it's non-negotiable, this is why. This is because we are training for longevity and vitality, and we are training for the zombie apocalypse and being hot and happy and all of the things that come with, aging well There's a strategy to this. So, well, Deborah, where can everyone find you? You have so many great offerings online. I know your YouTube is phenomenal, your Instagram and your website's a wealth of knowledge. Where can everyone find that?
Yeah, well, I'll start in the reverse. So on social, we're at Flipping 50 TV, as in television, Flipping 50 TV. Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube are the biggest channels where you'll find me. And you can find us also at flipping50.com, all words spelled out, no numbers.
And you have a cool little freebie that you shared with me.
We do a 5-day flip for people who are not sure I have time, not sure I have energy, want to do it at home, don't yet want to go to a gym. So it's 5 short videos to get you started, convince you that you do have time, that even a little bit contributes to your energy, and you can do this.
I'll make sure that link is in the show notes for everybody because it's great. I went through it and it's awesome. You're a wealth of knowledge and you provide such a wonderful service because I feel like this is a very underserved community. And there are some people in the influencer space now sort of talking to this age bracket of women, but you have been talking to these women about being strong and fit for a long time now. So I really appreciate the work you've been doing and continue to do.
Well, thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
Yes, I love it. Everyone's going to love this. Thanks for being on. Thanks for listening to the Dr. Tina Show. This is a Wellness Loud production produced by Drake Peterson and mixed by Mike Fry. Theme song is by John the Guild. You can watch the full video version of this podcast inside the Spotify app or on YouTube. As always, you can email the podcast at podcast@drtina.com. That's DRTYNA. And if you like this episode, please rate, review, and subscribe on your favorite podcast app. You can also find all of my offerings on my website at drtina.com. For more shows by my team, go to wellnessloud.com. See you next time, and thanks for listening. This podcast is for general informational purposes only. It does not constitute the practices of medicine, nursing, or other professional healthcare services, including the giving of medical advice. I am a doctor, but I am not your doctor. No doctor-patient relationship is formed. The use of this information and the materials linked to this podcast is at the user's own risk. The content on this podcast is intended not to be a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Users should not disregard or delay in obtaining medical advice from any medical condition they have, and they should seek the assistance of their healthcare professionals for any such conditions.